Welcome to Cool Explorations. I'm your host, Tony Peters. Today we're going to be talking to author of the book Hellven. His name is David Stanfield, and he's going to talk about the loss of his son, how this shaped his family, and how it led to the book. Welcome to Cool Explorations. Today we have David Stanfield with us, and he's going to talk about his book, Hellven. Why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you're currently doing?
I tell everyone I just consider myself just a normal guy. Nothing special. I grew up a preacher's son with three other siblings, and so I've been in church all my life and got saved at an early age, and uh, got a family now, and been married for 24 years in November, and I work in construction. I'm a vice president of a construction company in Dallas, Texas, and that's pretty much a little bit about me, where I'm at right now in my life.
Yeah, I thought
Uh,
I could detect a Texas accent there. So, why don't you tell us your testimony, what that's looked like for you, and what God is currently doing in your life? I know you mentioned you became a Christian at a young age. What was it like after you became a Christian?
I like I got saved at 8 years old, uh, and my dad, being a preacher, was able to really walk me through that process and make sure I understood because I was so young. But I distinctively remember it, and I had the luxury of being able to be baptized by my dad, and so that was special. And then, we as we get older and uh, go through life, you get to a point where you maybe stray a little bit from where you're supposed to be on that Christian walk, and we all struggle with it, and
Yeah.
I did, and uh, but I was constantly staying in church, and once I started my own family, I made sure we were in church, and uh, but like I said, there's struggles that come with just life, and uh, that's kind of what led me to this book, is just talking about a lot of things happened over the last several years in my own life and my family, and uh, I think that's the reason that God put this book on my heart, was to just talk about. There's so many of us Christians facing struggles right now, and getting off this path that we're all supposed to walk on daily with Christ. That there's a message there that everybody needs to know, that they're not alone if they're struggling with different things, and they're
Mhm.
definitely not alone wandering off the path, and that there is God standing there waiting on that path for us to come back to Him. And that's kind of what the whole message of the book is, and helping us deal with different struggles. And uh, I give a lot of my own personal stories and testimony in the book, and I just think it's a message that I needed to hear as God was giving that to me to write. And I think there's a lot of people out there that need to hear what the ultimate goal of the book is, which is for us all to get out of this mentality that it's okay to live for the world and not for God. So uh, I just hope it can help people that were struggling with different things. And like I said, it really helped me just writing it and getting into the Word that God gave me, and it's just been a neat thing to see and be a part of. So
Yeah, and God definitely uh, needs needs us to be sharing that word with people right now, and the messages of hope, because right now, yeah, like you say, things are very dark right now, and there's a lot of vitriol being spread. So messages of just knowing how to walk with God and not be of this world is definitely a very important message. What ultimately inspired you to write the book, and just a general overview of the main focus of the book? I know you briefly covered that, but if you could just cover a little bit more in there.
sure. Strange thing is I'm not a book guy. I never have really liked reading that much. I stay so busy. I'm not somebody that can just sit down and take the time to read a lot. I try to study a little bit, read a few scriptures in the mornings. Haven't been consistent with it because like I said, I'm just not a person that's into the sitting and reading. So, but I am a guy that I feel like the Lord talks to at night or when I am still and quiet. And one night I was laying in bed and woke up, and I feel like the Lord was directly talking to me about this book and told me, I want you to write a book. Here's what I want it to be called. Here's what I want in it. And it was very, very vivid, to the point to where I got up immediately and got some paper and a pencil and just started writing, everything I was being fed from the Lord. And I even sketched out, he showed me a picture of the front of the book. I even sketched it out. And then I put it all on my nightstand, went back to sleep. Next morning, I thought it was maybe even a dream, but looked over on my nightstand. There's all my notes. So, but I immediately started thinking, why in the world would God want me to write a book? I'm not a book person. I don't like books. I mean, it's just personal thing. Like I said, I just don't take the time to sit and read. So writing was even, more of a struggle for me to fathom that I could even be capable of doing this. So, I kind of put it to the side. My wife saw it and asked what it was, and I told her what had happened, and she kind of laughed too, because she knows, she is one that sits and reads, and she gets up at 4 o'clock every morning, reads the Bible for an hour, and then she's reading books of all kinds all the time. So, anyways, a long story short, a lot of time had passed. I kind of ignored it, and I ended up one day driving around with a friend. I'm in construction, so we were going out to a job site. I told the friend about the dream, or the vision that I got from the Lord, and he looked at me and said, if God wanted a goat to write a book, that goat better write a book. And he says, you should take it serious. You're acting like you're not capable of being called to write a book, but it's a special thing if God calls somebody to do something. And that got my attention, and I actually started kind of jotting down some more notes and things around that time. And then the self-doubt the enemy puts in your ears started creeping in, and I was like, I can't do this. I don't even know where to begin. Even though he kind of gave me an outline, I was like, I'm just not capable of doing it. So literally, I think 3 more years passed, and my friend and I ended up at different jobs. And this guy that had told me that, about not ignoring God's calling, I hadn't seen him in about 3 years. And one morning, I got up on a Sunday morning getting ready to go to church, and my phone dinged, and it was a Facebook message, private message, and it was from this friend. I haven't spoken to him in 3 years. And he said, the only thing the message said was, God told me to tell you to write that book. And I'm like, Daniel has no idea that I have not started writing the book, or hadn't already written the book, because it's been 3 years since I've even spoken to him. So I knew the Lord was using him to get my attention again. So, even when I tell that story right now, like I'm getting chills on my arms, because it's just when you have an interaction with God, or someone uses God to communicate to you, it's just a strong deal. And anyways, I responded to him. I said, thanks for that. I really needed that push again. And he came back right back and said, God says that's going to release blessings in your life that's been held back from your ignoring his calling. So I think that was in about 2016. And I immediately sat down and started writing, and then eventually transferred some scribbles to the computer, and made it a point every morning I would get up and sit down. I would just pray, turn on some worship music, and just say, Lord, what do you want me to say? Because I don't know how to do this without you. And I feel like you gave me this story of, and what you want to be said is up to you. So, and as soon as I would do that, I would just start typing, and about an hour every morning, and until I had the book. And anyways, some time had passed. I had this finished book, and then I didn't know what to do with it. So I basically just prayed and said, I feel like I was obedient and wrote this book. I don't know if it's any good, but if it's from you, I know it, you'll use it for your glory. And the next thing I know, I'm trying to figure out, where to send it or how do I do this? I don't know anything about that process. And I was browsing Facebook one night and saw this little ad, and it said, "Are you a Christian that's written a Christian book? If so, blah, blah, blah." This, they were looking for transcripts, and it was TBN has a publishing company, and it was them, and they were basically having a contest that said you can send us in your transcripts, and we're going to select a few of these, and we're going to publish it. And anyways, I submitted the book, prayed about it, and said, maybe this is something you want me to do, so I'm going to try it. So I sent it in, and within a couple of weeks, they've responded and said, we like it. We're going to go to the next step with you. And then next thing you know, they're publishing the book, and they give you cover design and the whole 9 yards, and treat you like you're, like a big time author. So that was really neat. And just looking back on it, you realize that it's just that step of obedience that got you to that point. And that, I look at all the time I wasted and realize, God had all of this lined up in his perfect timing, but what could have been even better if I would have, immediately been obedient. And I've got different chapters in the book that I talk about different struggles, and obedience is one of them. And I discuss, in a little more depth how I was not obedient immediately and what blessings and things I might have missed out on over that time period when I wasn't writing the book or whatever. So, but the name of the book is Hellven, and then it's got a subtitle called "The Struggles of Being a Worldly Christian," which is what I think as Christians as a whole in this world that we live in, Christianity and religion is just becoming almost like a joke. And it's really because as Christians are becoming so hypocritical that, worldly people don't recognize the difference between us and them. So, they're like, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like God gave me all this stuff for this book to show that he wants us to get rid of that mentality and start, living like we're supposed to live, so that people can definitely see a difference between Christians and worldly people, and want to know what that difference is and why we're different than them. And they're going to want to, have what we've got, because right now we're doing such a poor job with it. And that's, I'm admitting that I've done a poor job with it myself. So, and I talk about the reason we're having all these struggles that we're having is because we're not living like we're supposed to live. And of course, you could be the perfect example of a Christian and you're still going to struggle, because God doesn't promise you that you're not going to have struggles. He just promises you help through those struggles. And I do feel like you're going to have less struggles when you're really living like you're supposed to live. But that's really what the message of the book is get out of the world mentality, get back on track with the Lord. And then it talks about different struggles and how to overcome those struggles. And at the end of each chapter, it gives you scriptures to go along with those types of struggles that you can go to. And when you're really dealing with things, you can, the best thing to do is to get into his word. So I give you about 10 scriptures at the end of each chapter that deals with that specific struggle. And it's something you can go back to. I found myself, when I'm still struggling with different things, I go back to those scriptures that the Lord pointed me to. And it's helped me get through different things that I've gone through. So And then I've got a lot of personal stories in there, things I went through and things my family's gone through. Uh, we lost a son to suicide about 6 years ago, and there's a whole chapter in there on grief and what we dealt with, what we're still dealing with on a daily basis. And you know, without the Lord, I don't think we would be able to handle the things that life has thrown at us. But because we do have our faith and our hope, we're able to get up and go through our days and still have some joy in our life that we're going to see our son again. And just it goes into a lot of depth on that. And it's been neat to, since this book came out, I've actually had people contact me and say, I lost a child recently, and that chapter on grief just really helped me deal with things. And the scriptures you put in there and the stories you've told about you and your wife and kids. And I mean, that's really what this book is about for me personally, is seeing how the Lord's used me to help others. And that's what it's all about. That's what I'm hoping that it will do, is get out to the people that need to hear the different messages in the book, the different scriptures, and just help people, start living better lives for Christ and not of this world.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you bring up prayer, because I think that is something oftentimes we don't do enough of, is prayer, and that needs to come with everything that we're doing. So I love that you bring that up, and I do love, and I'm just scrolling through your book here as you're talking. I do love that you're bringing up scripture at the end of every section, so that people have that reference that they can look to, and that they can be like, oh yeah, okay, so this scripture applies to me. And one of those scriptures may not necessarily resonate with somebody, but one of the other scriptures in there might be that scripture that really just resonates. And so I think that's an important part in your book here, as well. A tough question, but your experience with losing your son to suicide, I know that is such a hard thing to go through. And I know I myself, I was suicidal. I almost ended my life at 17. So my parents would have been in this same boat had I gone through with that, and the Lord not stopped me from doing so. How has that event shaped your family, and that experience? How has it shaped your walk with God?
You before you experience any kind of tragedy like that or loss that's close, you really don't know what to expect or how to act or how to feel. You
Mhm.
hear all cliche things about, the 5 stages of grief and different things, but you know, the reality of it is, and it is, until you actually deal with something like that personally, you really just don't know what's going to happen or how you're going to handle it. And it was obviously the hardest thing we've ever gone through in our lives. And it's been, over 6 years now, and it's something we still struggle with. My wife and I, and we've got two daughters, one's 17 and one's 22. And, just this year, my 22-year-old daughter, on her birthday, when she turned 22, my son was 22 6 years ago when he passed away. So even this year, 6 years later, my oldest daughter struggled with actually turning 22 and feeling like, okay, now I'm going to be older than my older brother. And it's just things that I think we'll deal with things like this the rest of our lives. But do you sit in that depression that's caused by that grief and all the negativity of it, or do you look to the Lord for hope? Our biggest word, I think, is hope. We have hope in the Lord that we're going to be with our son again. He was saved, and he actually, prior to the last few years of his life, he had actually surrendered to ministry and wanted to be a youth minister. And, looking back on things, we really feel like once he made that commitment, which is true to all of us, when you really decide to make a stand for the Lord, that's when the enemy is really going to attack you. And we felt like there was a clear place there in his life where he was on track and on fire for the Lord and made that commitment to surrender to ministry. And then it was like, bam, he just got attacked and, got things like depression and some of the things we talk about in the book, but just got overcome with the things of the world. And ultimately, I think that, the enemy just won that battle of his inner battle there. But anyways, we the first couple of years, are a blur to us. There's things I don't even remember that happened over the first couple of years after we lost him. And you go through times where you're really angry at the Lord. And I know there was times where I would be by myself and just yell at the Lord, why would you do that? And why would you take our son and or allow that to happen? And you blame, and then you go through periods where you're blaming yourself and you're blaming other people in the situation. And then ultimately you're going to hit bottom. And then the only thing you can do is, as a Christian, is look up to God. And that was a very hard time and a very hard place to get to, that very bottom. But looking up and realizing you've got a loving Father there to pick you up and pull you up out of that hole that you're in was a very beautiful place for us to get to. And being able to do that with my wife and with my girls, and being able to come up out of the dark cloud that we lived in for a couple of years of just terrible grief has been beautiful. And it's brought our family closer together. And again, we still struggle with different things. And it's, you can be perfectly fine one day and then the next day just be overcome with that grief again. And that's fine too. We've learned that each of us has different ways to grieve, and different feelings are going to come up on different days. There's still things that happen every year, anniversaries, birthdays, different things that bring some of that back close. But there's always that love and hope from God that just gets us through. And there was a time where I thought I would lose my wife right after my son passed. She just didn't want to live. She was just in such a dark, sad place, and all I could do is pray, that the Lord would open her eyes and heart and let her see Him. And like I said, we've all pulled through it, and I just don't see how people can get through stuff like that without God, or without the hope and the faith that you have as a Christian. And my wife now actually works with a suicide group in the county that we live in, and it's called the Lost Team. And anytime anyone in this county, which we're near Dallas, Texas, so it's a big, densely populated area, but anytime someone dies by suicide, they alert the police and the coroners come. But then they call this Lost Team, which is a group of volunteers that my wife actually volunteers with, and they will go to the scene and counsel the family. And it just amazes me that God can take somebody like my wife that's lost a son to this terrible, I think it's suicide's nothing but an attack, a direct attack from Satan. And
sure.
families apart. But God can take something from something that terrible, and now He's using my wife to just love on and counsel with different families of people that have lost someone to suicide. And I have a hard time talking about it, so I don't go and do this. But my wife, I've watched her do it. I've been with her when she's done it, and it's just beautiful to me, because I know I can look back and see where she was even 5 years ago, and look at her today helping all these people, and it's just God, and it's just I'm in awe of it. I'm in awe of Him, and she also does some classes through our church that are for grief and dealing with different things like that comes with losing people, and uh, I feel like she's got that God's using her for, and I feel like God's used me with this book and the message that He's wanted me to bring forth in the book. And my daughters have struggled terribly losing their older brother, and I see where they're at today, and it's been a battle and a lot of hard times for them, but they're pulling through. And my youngest daughter's senior in high school this year and doing great, and my older daughter's doing great, and it's just all of it is not possible unless you're putting that faith and trust and hope in the Lord. And I go into a lot of depth in that grief chapter in the book that talks about how we've been able to get to that point, and it's not easy. And like I said, you're going to go through times where you're definitely not going to, be happy with the Lord and feeling like it, how could you let this happen? And then you realize that all of it is, it's God's, it's not God's plan or intentions or anything to hurt you or your family or your loved one. But ultimately, you got to realize all of that just comes together, and that He's there to pick you up when you're in that position. And like I said, all of it has brought us to the point to where we are today, to where we can do these, like this, talking about it and using that bad situation to help others that have been through it. So that's what it's about for us now is, how can we help others and, make obviously the Lord proud, but also do things to honor our son. And because we know that wasn't him that day that took his life, that was the enemy. And if you sit and let that be the end of that story and not, do things to honor that loved one, then you're letting the enemy win, and we're not willing to do that. So
Yeah, and it's definitely a story throughout Scripture and throughout history since then that, God does bring good out of terrible situations. Joseph and David and Daniel, you can see so many different times throughout the Bible when He's turned their terrible situations and brought something good out of it. And I love that your wife is able to do that counseling, because counseling is so very important for people who've experienced any kind of trauma. So anybody who has gone through that trauma, I do recommend getting some kind of counseling. Christian counseling is best, but some kind of counseling to help. And you're right, the devil definitely does attack you when you start getting that fire going and you start working for the Lord. The devil is going to come after you, and he's going to come after you hard because he does not want you to be successful in what you're doing, and he wants to try and hinder the Lord. But every time the devil does that, the devil plays right into God's hand and ends up bringing good about from the terrible situations.
right.
And so with your book, I know that's a lot of what the purpose is for the book, is that hope, and trying to get people through these situations. Where can people find your book or yourself online?
Just about any of the retail bookstores online will have it. You can search it by the word Hellven, which is Hellven. It's like Hellven, and hell and heaven.
Yeah.
Or by my name, David Stanfield. And the easiest place to get it would be like Amazon, but you can definitely find it at any of them.
Yeah, and we'll put a link to Amazon in the description there for people to go and find the book. If they want to purchase from elsewhere, that's fine, but they can at least take a look at what the book is right on there and read the little. They always have a sample piece in there. What advice would you have for people who are dealing with that loss in their family or some kind of trauma themselves?
You just really have to get to a point. Like I said, sometimes it takes getting all the way to that, you know, bottom, and to where the only thing you can do is look up, and because it's so hard when you're in this place of deep grief or depression, to where even it's hard to even look up physically, yet alone spiritually. So uh, my biggest advice is just you're going to have to find a way to find God in that depression or in that grief, and He is right there with you. And you know, I picture Him just having His hand on your back the whole time, and sometimes you don't even realize He's sitting there just waiting for you to look up and hug Him. And our God is a loving God, and that's all He wants to do is love on us and help us through anything we're going through. But uh, you know, think about stories in the Bible that talk about Jesus wept when you know there's different scenarios in there where He shows a lot of emotion. So I know when we're in these positions of grief and depression and things that are just bringing us down, he's right there with us, and we just have to realize that. And what, no matter what the struggle is, he's even if you're not in a sad position, or you're dealing with different things, which the book talks about all kinds of different struggles. But it's as simple as realizing that God is right there with you, and He's ready and willing to help you, and just asking the Lord to help you. And not only can He help you, by filling your thoughts with the right things and giving you that advice or pointing you at His word. And there's many times where I'll be struggling with something, and I'll just open my Bible and say, Lord, show me something. And boom, you ask Him, He's going to give it to you. One way or the other, people have to realize too, is it might not be the answer you're looking for, but it's probably the answer you need. And God will fulfill that. So it's just looking at Him and
Yeah.
not of the world. So
Yeah, and that is definitely something key to remember is that God does answer prayer. It's not always the answer you're looking for, but He does answer, and it is usually the uh, the exact thing that you actually need to hear. Maybe not right at that second, but down the road you'll be able to look back and be like, "Yeah, that was exactly what I needed." And
absolutely.
so thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing your book, your story with us as well. Um, and yeah, all the best to you and your family as you continue to make a difference through the loss of your son.
I really appreciate it. We appreciate you having me on, and your time. And like I said, I just, my goal with the book is just getting in as many hands as needed to help people. So uh, I encourage people to pick it up. I tell people on like my Facebook page and stuff. Just the book is cheaper than going and getting a cheap meal for lunch. So take it, read it, get what you need out of it, and pass it along. That's what it's all about, is just getting in the right hands of people that are struggling and getting that message out. That's all it means to me. And then, the satisfaction of knowing I was obedient, the satisfaction in knowing that God's message that He gave me is reaching others, is what I want out of it. So I hope it's a blessing to everybody that receives it.
Thank you for listening to Cool Explorations. You've just been listening to author David Stanfield of the book Hellven, where he discusses losing his son and how that shaped his family. Yet God was still at work through this entire process, and it's led to his writing the book Hellven. If you would like to reach me for any reason, you can do so at tpeters745@gmail.com.